All right, well, welcome, ladies, to our 4th week of Sisterhood. Would you join me in welcoming our online audience and all those watching on video? I'm so glad that you're here today. I love sisterhood. I love what sisterhood means to me, and just being a part of this gathering. I do want to take a moment and just thank Pastor Carrie just for what she sacrificed to make this happen, and just her stepping up into her call, which has in turn allowed us to each step into our calls, and knowing that as a female, it's okay to be a leader as well. You know, we're submitted under the authority of the house, we're submitted under male leadership, but we can step up into everything that God has for us. We have a voice as well, and I just love that about this church, that each one of us has a voice. And so I just want to thank Pastor Carrie just for this opportunity to be up here today. We're in a series called The Summer of 7 Habits, and so we are in week 4. The first 3 weeks, we've really been looking at our own personal victory, so internal victory, getting strong on the inside. This book actually defines the personal victory as mastering ourselves, but as Christians, I really feel like maybe a better definition would be allowing God to master us. I think instead of us mastering ourselves, it's really allowing God to master us and be the master over us, and really submitting our lives to Him. And so as we look at the first 3 weeks, the first week we talked about being proactive. As we're proactive, we do have a choice to make. God's given us free will. He does have a plan for us. He has a purpose for us, but we have a choice in the matter. And we have to be proactive in order to choose well, in order to choose what He has for us. And there are blessings that are attached to the God first life. I love the example of children. Whenever you have children, and let's say there's one and he's misbehaving, he's being bad, he's not listening to you, he's not doing as you ask, he's not doing as you say, are you gonna wanna reward that child? No, you're not gonna reward the bad behavior, you're not gonna reward when he's disobeying you. Well, when you do have a child and the child's listening to what you're saying and the child's being obedient, the child's doing what you ask, then you're going to want to reward that child, right? Well, that's how it is with God. When we're being obedient, when we're living the God first life, when we're prioritizing our lives according to His principles, there are going to be blessings that are attached to that. Not only because we're being obedient, but also because His ways actually are better. Like His ways actually do bring blessing in our lives. And so as we're obedient, as we walk that God first life, as we're proactive to step into the call that He has for us, there are going to be blessings attached to that. And then Linda beautifully talked in the second week about beginning with the end in mind. And that end isn't just our own vision for our lives, that's God's vision for our lives. We have to know what He's called us to, just like in Ephesians 2:10. God created us by His handiwork for the good works that He prepared in advance for us to do. He's prepared good works for us to do. But how are we going to know what those good works are unless we're seeking Him for those things? And so we have to seek Him to find that end goal that He has for us. And we have to have a vision for the future. We can't just live for today. Yes, we're not supposed to worry about tomorrow, but we should be thinking about tomorrow. We should be planning for tomorrow, knowing that, what is our life going to look like in 20 years? Well, what does God want our lives to look like in 20 years? What does He want us to prioritize? What does He want our health to look like? What does He want our relationships to look like? What does He want our finances to look like? Well, the decisions we make today will determine what's going to happen in the future, and that goes into week 3, which Leah did such a fabulous job with that, talking about the foundation of putting first things first, put first things first. And really the very first thing, and I love that it's really our mission statement, leading people to experience the God first life. The first thing is God. Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. And so put those first things first. Get your priorities in order. Prioritize the things that God wants us to prioritize. And so really those first 3 weeks we're all about strengthening the inside. We have to be healthy on the inside. We have to be healthy ourselves in order to have healthy relationships, right? The more healthy we are, the more healthy our relationships will be, because they're really an extension of that. And so if we have a strong character, if we've built our lives on God's principles and on God's foundations, that sets the foundation, just like Leah was talking about last week, that firm foundation that then all our relationships can be built on. And so we have to have that firm foundation where we're building our lives on the principles of God, to then move into, okay, now being interdependent, having those interdependent relationships where We're not dependent on others. See, that's actually unhealth, where we're dependent on others to find our satisfaction or to find our worth or to find our value. We're not dependent on others. We have that independence in God, being dependent on God alone. But we move into interdependence, where just like Pastor John Wyatt talked about this past weekend, we are better together. We're better when we work together. Rather than us being isolated and just us being independent and, okay, we found our strong character and we built our life on good principles. Well, okay, that's great, but just like he was talking about, the LeBron James, or whatever that guy's name is that his name? LeBron James? Okay, sorry. LeBron James, just like LeBron James, where, he might be the star and he might be the best basketball player ever, but he can't go play a whole team by himself. You've got to have your sisters with you. You've got to have your people with you. You've got to have your family. You've got to have those other people surrounding you as well, because you're going to go farther. Just like one falls alone, there's no one there to pick them up. If two are there, one can help the other. And a three-folded cord, you know what I'm trying to say? That three-chord thing, three chords go together. They're not easily broken, okay? Y'all know what I'm saying? And so having those relationships. And so one principle that I do want to talk about before we go into the habit for today is the principle of our relational bank accounts. So we each have relational bank accounts. And whether or not you realize it, you have a bank account with every single person who you have ever interacted with. Every single person that you've ever interacted with, you have a bank account. That bank account may be in the black. It may be, in the positive. You've got money in that account. You've got assets in that account. Or it could be in the negative. Could be in the red. Could be you've taken too many withdrawals and you haven't put in enough deposits. So we can make deposits into people's lives, and we can make withdrawals from people's lives, from our relationships. Some things to kind of contrast a little bit. What are some deposits and what are some withdrawals? When we keep our promises to others, that's a deposit. When you say, I'm going to be here, and you're there, that's a deposit. You're showing that person, you can trust me. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. As a parent, when you say, I'm going to be at your basketball game, I'm going to be there to support you at that dance recital, and then you show up and you're there, that's a deposit. Now, when you break your promises, that's a withdrawal. When you say you're going to be there, when you say you're going to do something, when you say, oh, I'll handle that for you, but then it doesn't get handled, that's a withdrawal. That's the opposite. And so you're taking something out. Do small acts of kindness. That's a deposit. When we do those small acts of kindness, that's a deposit into someone's life. When we leave them a little note, when we give them a phone call, just a smile, just a hug, just, hey, how are you? Just asking them what's going on in their lives. And I read this one and I started thinking, well, what's the opposite of do small acts of kindness? Well, do small acts of evil, or, do small acts, like I'm thinking like that's the opposite, like it's probably like kind of being mean to someone or whatever. Well, I read the opposite and then I got kind of convicted. It says, keep to yourself. So the opposite is actually when you keep to yourself. So we actually think sometimes we're maybe, just respecting other people by not saying hi, or respecting other people by not going that extra mile, or whatever the case might be. But actually, that can be a withdrawal from someone. When you just keep to yourself and you don't say hi and you don't smile and you're not aware of the people around you and you're not, outgoing and asking them how their day is or how their week's been, that can actually be a withdrawal from the relationship just by keeping to yourself, just by not saying hi. Like, you don't even have to intentionally do something mean or something that kind of slights them intentionally. You can actually just keep to yourself, and that can be a withdrawal from the relationship. A deposit, be loyal. Be loyal in your relationships. A withdrawal, gossiping and breaking confidence. And even a withdrawal, it may not be, let's say I had a little tiff with this girl right here, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to talk about her and say, listen what this girl did, blah, 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 blah. That's not just breaking a confidence with this person. That's actually breaking a confidence with this person, because what do they now know? If they ever cross you or if they ever do anything against you, you're going to be talking to somebody else about them. And so now you've shown two people that you can't be trusted because you're gossiping about people behind their back. You're showing what kind of person you are. You can also make a deposit by listening to others, just by listening, being a listening ear. When they have something going on in their lives, just by opening up yourself to listen. And you can make a withdrawal by not listening. You can make a deposit by saying you're sorry, by apologizing for something. Especially as a parent, this is huge for kids. When a parent apologizes and says, you know what, I made the wrong decision here. I'm sorry for that. That goes a long way, makes a huge deposit in them. Versus being arrogant, which is a withdrawal. When you decide, you know what, I may have been wrong, but I had my reasons. You know, you have your excuses. So that's where you make a withdrawal. You make a deposit when you set clear expectations about a relationship or about a job position or whatever it might be. You know, they used an example in the teen book of like leading people on. You know, whenever you're in a relationship, maybe you're single, you know, and I wrote a blog about this a long, long time ago, but talking about, you know, guys who kind of lead girls on and they show all the signs that they're interested, they act like they're interested, but maybe they just like the attention from that girl. They just like having that girl around, but they're not actually interested in pursuing the relationship. So you're setting false expectations. So when you set clear expectations up front, this is what the relationship is, these are the expectations, then that's a deposit into the relationship, because that shows that you're willing to be vulnerable and be honest about the relationship, you're willing to be open, versus setting false expectations, which can be a withdrawal from the relationship, because you're setting up an expectation that then you're not going to meet. So that's going to be a withdrawal. And actually, the closer the relationship, the more deposits we have to make. You know, the more ongoing the relationship is, the more constant it is, the more constant we're going to have to make deposits. Think about it. You know, if you had a friend from high school, you may run into them. It's been like 10, 15 years, but it's like, hey, how are you? You know, you can kind of pick right back up where you left off because, you know, you can still go off of those old deposits that were there from a long, long time ago. Or, you know, you could think about it with withdrawals. If you had a hurt from that person, you see them again, you're probably still going to have that hurt there. Because the distance in the relationship, it hasn't put deposits, but it hasn't put additional withdrawals either. Well, with people who are ongoing, like marriages, family, close friends, you're going to need ongoing deposits. You can't just make one big deposit and then, okay, I'm good for a while. You know, I know that's maybe how some men want to operate, like, okay, I took you on a date, you're good for like 6 months, right? But you have to actually make ongoing deposits into that relationship, because you know what? Just from life and everyday things, you're making constant withdrawals from that relationship. And there are constant things that are going on in that relationship. And so it's important to know that we each have a relational bank account, and that also with relationships, there are no quick fixes. You know, really with all of this, there are no quick fixes. With our internal, with our personal victory, you can't just slap a Band-Aid on it and call it a day. You know, it's not just like you can go out and get this awesome planner and then all of a sudden you're totally organized. You know, how many of you have like done that before? Like, you're like, if I just had this, I would be so organized. How many of you have done it? Be honest. I think we probably all have at some point or another. Like, my mom was like, I want to buy this kitchen table. I really think if I buy this table, then we'll eat at the table more. And I was like, Mom, trust me, it does not work that way. You buy the table and you don't change your habits, you're still going to do the same exact thing you've always done. And so it's not so much about the quick fix like we think it is. We think, oh, this quick fix will do the trick, but it's not about that. It actually takes longevity, small steps forward. It takes discipline in our lives to build that. And so it takes time. You know, there are no quick fixes, but you know, whenever it does come to our personal lives, oftentimes we've learned to live with that chronic feeling of pain. Like, we know that we're not totally doing everything the right way, or we know there's maybe a little bit of a gap somewhere, but we've learned to live with that. You know, we can kind of quiet that a little bit. It might be a little bit uncomfortable. You know, we might try to make little steps toward change, but you know, but we can kind of live with that. We've learned to live with the pain of, okay, we're not where we need to be in our personal lives. But how many of you know when it comes to relationships, we feel the pain when there's a pain in a relationship? It's very acute. We're very aware of it. And so that's why I feel like even more in relationships, that's where we try to slap on the quick fix.